This is The Right Approach. I'm J.W. Judge, and with me is my co-host, Barbara Hinsky. This is a podcast for writers to learn more about the craft and business of writing as we explore a new topic every week. Our guest today is Michael La Ronn, the author of, and I have lost count, many books, both fiction and nonfiction. He is a staple in the author community of an author who is always helping other authors. Included in those things is a podcast he hosts with Sasha Black for the Alliance of Independent Authors. And he is here today to talk about author estates. So welcome to The Right Approach.
Hey, Jeremy. Hey, Barb. Great to be here.
Good morning. Yeah, such a slacker you are with, a huge blog and all these fiction books and nonfiction.
Yeah, I really got a lot of fire, but I'm just trying to slack off and just letting everybody else take care of all the problems.
There you go.
All right, so let's start with what an author estate is, because I really think this is a hugely important topic. It's one that I have the book and need to apply these things to do this for myself. But let's start with what it is, and then get into, why it matters. I think those go hand in hand there.
Great. Well, let's take a step back and let's talk about what happens before you die, because we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what happens after you die. But as a writer, you are writing books and short stories and other forms of intellectual property. In most countries around the world, you have the exclusive rights of a copyright owner for those works for your life plus 70 years. So for the entirety of your life, you can control those copyrights and enjoy all the benefits that copyright owners have. And then those rights pass to your heirs after you die, and they have those rights for 70 years, upon which your work passes to the public domain. So everything that you're doing right now, writing your books, this podcast episode, or if you have a podcast, if you have a YouTube channel, short stories, you name it, is all intellectual property that has immense monetary value. And I think we sometimes forget that. But our books make money every month, at least hopefully, even if they're just making coffee money, you're making money from those books. And you want to be able to pass that down to your family or whoever you want to take stewardship of your work so that they can continue to make money from your work, exploit your works. And hopefully, if things work out right, maybe they can do more with your books than you were able to accomplish in your lifetime. I mean, think about all the authors that we read today that weren't very popular in their day. And so this is an immense opportunity. And that's the first thing that I want to talk about. So when you have an estate, that is when you have passed away. And that is when your heirs take over and they begin managing your work per your wishes.
Okay, that's really important to talk about the timeline. And obviously you need, for authors, and some people are really uncomfortable talking about death and wills and estates and doing all of that, but you need to set aside that fear to handle this business up front, because it's way harder for anybody to do anything with after the fact. Yeah. Okay, so this encompasses all of the intellectual property that you create during your lifetime. So let's go from there.
Okay, so the first thing is you alluded to it. You've got to come to terms with the fact that you're going to die just like everybody else in human existence. If you're not going to die, I need somebody to call me and tell me how to figure out how you can accomplish that. But the reality is we're all going to die. And I think the best way to illustrate this and try to get through to people about why you need to tackle this is explaining to people what can happen when you don't do this planning. So I wrote 2 books. They're called the Author Estate Handbook and the Author Heir Handbook. And I try to go through what happens when you die as an author, when you don't organize these things. Because Jeremy, you mentioned it would be a lot harder to manage these things when you're gone. Well, in some cases, it might be impossible. For example, I'll give you just a real simple easy example. Let's say that you have a computer, a writing computer, you have a passcode on your computer, and all of your manuscripts are on that computer. Well, if your spouse doesn't have the passcode to your laptop, game over. If they don't have the passcode to your Amazon account, could be game over. Good luck getting Amazon on the phone to release passwords. They generally don't do that sort of thing. So it will be a lot harder, but in some cases it might be impossible, and it might even result in you not having an estate at all. It could be such a burden that your heirs say, you know what, I don't want to do this, or I can't do this, or I don't have the skills to do it. And so that is the risk. And then your work will die with you. So if you don't tackle this, you're essentially guaranteeing that your work is going to die with you. And I think that most people listening to this don't want that to happen. And you also have to think about the empathy part of it. I think we have to have some empathy for what we're about to put our spouses and children and grandchildren through, because most of them, they know we sit in a room and make stuff up for a long period of time, but they have no idea what we do every day. And that's just the reality of it. And so it's our responsibility to do this, not just for ourselves, but also out of kindness to them.
Yeah. You know, I've done a lot of my estate planning ahead of time, and I've read the other books in the space. If someone was only had the bandwidth to do one set of books, they are by far yours. That's where they start. These are the master class. And I hadn't even thought about the fact that my heirs might not have access to my stuff. And so I've corrected all of that. But the other point is, people say, well, okay, but you could file suit or whatever. Well, yeah, you probably could, and you'd probably get there. But if your estate, say, is bringing in, I don't know, $1,500 a month, guess what? You don't have the money to do that.
Right.
So it's just going to lapse. But do I want my family to have $1,500 a month? Would I feel good if somebody was giving me $1,500 a month? You bet I would.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah, I think you have made such good practical cases, and you don't just scare people. That's a lawyer tactic a lot of times. Nobody here, but you'll just raise some big hue and cry and make everybody terrified, but posit no solution, and you give the solution. These books, I cannot speak highly enough. Anyway,
well, thank you.
And back to the information.
And practicality is everything, right? Because I know that I began my own journey because I had a great grandfather who passed away because of old age, and he was born in the greatest generation, and before he died, he lived to be 94. And before he died, he said, you know what? I don't want to be a burden on the family. So here is my will. Here are my wishes. This is what I want. I want, this person to get the sewing machine, this person to get the money in the CD account, that sort of thing. And he made everything crystal clear. And then when he passed away, everyone was on the same page. We got his estate closed out really quickly. And I think the family was able to get closure a lot faster because of that. Because now when we think about my great-grandfather, we think about how kind he was to do all of that, because some people, they choose to die without having a will or anything, and that just causes a mess. And you don't want your last memory of your loved ones of you to be the fact that you couldn't get your crap together to try to pass things down and take care of them. So I think kindness is really important. And so the practicality part is really important, because there are a lot of steps to estate management. Your estate is going to look different than mine, Barb, and that's going to look different than Jeremy's. And so in many respects, this is like herding cats that don't want to be herded, and there's a lot of things that you got to think about. And so to the extent that I could break it down and just give you actionable tips, that was really what I was trying to do, was just give people some self-confidence and have a feeling that, hey, I can do this. This is not as hard as it sounds.
So there have been a lot of people who have set up their own estates, probably a lot more who haven't, but not very many who have written about it so that people have a better understanding. why was this important enough of a topic for you to take the time to write the books, both for the authors and for the heirs who come behind them?
I have a unique background. I am an insurance guy, and Jeremy, you can relate to this. So I am not a stranger to thinking about how to think about the future and how to prepare for contingencies. So that's just how my brain is wired. And I also went to law school. I'm not a lawyer, but I do have a legal education. And so I thought, well, this is something I want to learn about personally. So I'm going to go learn about it. And then why not write a book about it? Because one of the best ways to help make sure that you get a topic is to be able to teach others about it. And so I kind of have the unique background for it. And so I thought, well, I don't see very many books on the market that are geared toward this. So this could be a nice opportunity to fill that space.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was brilliant, a brilliant insight, because I think very few estate planning lawyers are competent in the literary estate. Very, very few. And this needs to be, for all the practicalities, an inside job, and you have to do that. I've created a 36-page document. You've got a document that you give a template for. I have my own that's a 36-page document that gives my heirs all the information. And I sat them down one Sunday when we were all together, and as my daughter laughed and teased and said, "Oh, Sunday fun day with mom, we're going through the estate." But you know what? You're going to be glad that I did that. And thank God you wrote the author heir handbook, because now there's something that I can make sure they have that tells them, okay, you've got this great list. What do I do with it? So I think,
Yeah.
which came first? Did you conceive of both books at once, or did you write one and then decide, you know what, I need to do the other?
Selfishly, I wrote that author heir handbook because my wife has no idea about publishing operations. And so
Yeah.
I tried to write the book that I would give to her to explain in plain English, super simple, super brief and concise, what it is that an indie author does every day. And where's the money at? And how do you exploit the copyrights? And where
Mhm.
might the files be on an author's computer? Just simple practical things that I hope will be helpful to heirs, because the author estate handbook is really about authors, and it's nitty gritty, on the boots on the ground trench warfare about what you need to do to be prepared. And the author heir handbook is almost like the inverse of that. It's
Yeah.
written for heirs and really designed to just help them take the first steps and just make sense of what they have. Because I mean, just imagine, just I mean, good for you, Barb, for taking care of your family like that. But you can still imagine, even when you're gone, just the sheer amount of things that they're going to have to deal with.
Yeah.
And so that's just that was really the intent of the book.
Yeah, honestly, it's a lot particularly if you're indie published, your ISBNs and all your different accounts and all that. It's a lot for us. So I think it is a helpful exercise, even if you didn't have heirs, to go through and organize this all for yourself. But that author heir
Exactly.
handbook, genius. Everybody needs to just go on Amazon and buy them both. And Jeremy, you have a young family. You need to do this too. I'm going to have to start nagging you.
I know, and I have the book, and it's I have it. It's in my queue. I've got to do it. All right. So,
well, that gets the job done, doesn't it?
I know.
Okay,
So do you have a recommendation about whether authors write as just sole proprietors, just doing business as themselves, or whether they set up an LLC or some kind of corporate entity? And knowing this isn't legal advice, and state to state is going to be very different. But do you have any general recommendations that you've experienced or seen things develop?
Well, I'll just keep it very high level, and the answer, as with all things, is it depends. Right? I mean, it depends on your situation. It depends on the number of assets you have. So as a sole proprietor, when you generate your works, you own the copyrights to those works, and those pass down to your heirs in many respects, irrespective of what your business entity is. If you have an LLC or corporation, you have some additional levers that you can pull. For example, you could, make your heirs give them the ownership of the business and then pass the copyrights onto the business, for example. There are things that you can do in that area. But this is why, and I say this till I'm blue in the face, really why you need somebody to help you from a legal perspective, because there are a lot of things to consider. What types of assets do you own? What state do you live in? There are things such as tax considerations that you have to think of as well. I mean, if you're thinking about a trust or LLC, which one do you pass your copyrights to? There's lots of things, and then you also have to think about the tax considerations for your heirs, right? So what sort of things do they have? So it's a lot of blending and marrying things into your heirs' particular situations. But I do go over in the book some explanations of what the different entities are, and what some considerations should be.
What do you think would be, and maybe this is putting you on the spot, but what do you think is the biggest aha moment that people are going to get from your author estate handbook? What do you think is the thing that people always go, oh my God, I didn't know that?
Yeah, the big one is two-factor authentication. So two-factor authentication. So most people understand now that with the digital world we live in, passwords are critical. And I think most people wouldn't be surprised to hear me say, hey, you need to pass your passwords down to your heirs, because if they don't have that, they can't get into your accounts. I think we all understand that. But the one thing that people don't think about is two-factor authentication. So two-factor authentication is when you put your username and password into a site, and then, like a bank, for example, will send you a text message. And the text message will have a one-time passcode. And you have to get that passcode from your text message, put it in the box, and then you get access to your account. And you have to do that in many respects, often every time you log in. So here's the hypothetical question. What happens when you die and your spouse or your heirs disconnect your phone line, and then they can no longer get those one-time passcodes? And I think we all have gotten those passcodes and never once thought, oh, wait a minute, there's going to be a day when I'm not here when the passcode's going to go nowhere. And if you don't get that passcode, you cannot get into the account, even if you have the username and password. And I cannot stress that enough. So I have an entire chapter in the book dedicated to helping you avoid this problem. And fortunately, there are solutions. First things first is disable text message two-factor authentication whenever you can. There are other ways to get it. There are little security keys you can buy. They kind of look like this. They're a little expensive, but you can buy those security keys and give those to your heirs. There are password or authenticator apps like Authy, Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator that allow you to get those codes to any device. You just have to have the username and password. All right. So there are ways around this problem. And I think that's typically an aha moment that people are like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I never thought about that. And so if I can help them avoid that, that's wonderful.
Yeah, it was for me. Yeah. And I haven't done those other things yet. That's my bad. But I did put at the top of my document, do not disable my phone. Keep it going.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Keep it going as long as you can, or until they can log into all of those accounts and change the phone number.
Yeah.
And that's the critical part.
Yeah.
And if you can do that, you will avoid a lot of problems.
Yeah. I don't think I ever would have thought of that.
So I'm sure that the book will address this. But for the sake of conversation, one of the things that I've thought of is, while I write some of my nonfiction under my given name because it's law related, all of my novels or fiction related nonfiction, I write under J.W. Judge, which is a pen name. I know we've talked about Barbara writes under a pen name, and I know that Michael, your fiction and nonfiction are under slightly different names. So is making an author estate made more complicated by using a pen name?
I don't think so. Not, in my opinion, not legally. if you publish the books in the same method, you own the rights regardless. I mean, a pen name is just a pen name. You can prove ownership of that name. Where it gets more complicated, though, is in the actual day-to-day administration of the estate. So, for example, and Jeremy, I imagine this is true for you. It's true for me. I have one website for Michael La Ronn, which is my fiction name, and another website for my author level up stuff, which is my nonfiction for writers. Well, now my heirs have to manage two sites, right? That's just stuff like that is more of the, I think, the bigger headache than the actual presence of a pen name.
Yeah. So it's not going to create them legal problems, just administration, not even problems, just more of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got 100 different pen names, maybe that's a different story. Trying to track down all the pen names that you have. I know some authors that have ghostwritten and have a pretty prolific history of spawning a pen name for every book that they wrote. But most people, I don't think, would have that problem. But yeah, it's the administration, it's the day-to-day stuff that's going to be the killer.
Yeah.
I want to change directions. We didn't talk about this ahead of time. You have a YouTube video or YouTube channel that is very prolific. And we just talked with Dave Chesson on the previous episode. It was all about some scams and things going on with Amazon and things for authors to be aware of. But he has also created Atticus, which is a competitor with Vellum and for book creation software. I saw you have a YouTube video about using both. And so I wanted to ask you, I haven't used Atticus yet. I've considered it. In fact, I have an aging Mac that somebody gave me for the sole purpose of putting Vellum on it. And so I know that in a few years, I'm going to have to decide what to do. Do I need another Mac just for the purpose of using Vellum? Or is Atticus now or going to be a viable alternative? So I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about your thoughts there.
Yeah, I love Atticus. I actually was just with Dave in Colorado at a writing event, and we were chatting about it. And I like it a lot. And I think Atticus is, in many respects, the future of writing apps. They're still building out a lot of functionality, but in terms of formatting, from what I can tell, you can pretty much do just about everything you can do with Vellum. So I love Vellum. I still use Vellum, but Atticus, I think, has a lot of promise in that you'll be able to write, edit, and format your manuscript all in one place. Because I think the biggest problem right now is that you've got to take your manuscript out of Scrivener, for example, if you use Scrivener, get it into Microsoft Word, get your editor to edit it in Microsoft Word, and then bring it back into Script. It's just kind of a pain, right? If you could do it all in one place, I think that's the future. And I think people are going to really eat that up. So I have used it. I've tested it out. I'm actually going to be doing a YouTube video review of Atticus here in the next month or two. So I'll have more to share then. But overall, I like it a lot. And I really am enjoying watching them build it out. I think it's good stuff.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I use Scrivener, put it in Word, run it through Pro Writing Aid, send it to my editor, and then I take it from there and do it in Vellum because I work on a Mac. But I've always been surprised that Scrivener was the big, one to start all of this. And it seems to me they've kind of let it all slip through the big competitor. They've let this business opportunity slip through their finger. And I think Dave Chesson is going to pick it up and take it across the finish line, because there should be software that does it all.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think a lot of people agree with that. I don't know. I can't speak for Literature Latte, the good folks that make Scrivener, but I think that they focus on doing what they do really, really well, which is making a really, really good writing app. And I think we just have to watch and see what their counter move is going to be. Because I do think that the landscape is changing. I think a lot of people are really wanting an all-in-one solution. So it'll be interesting to see how the competition heats up.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of folks use Scrivener, and as do I. and it has way more functionality than I actually use, and am constantly discovering new things. So I will put another plug in for Michael here and your YouTube channel, in that if there's ever anything you need to know about Scrivener, it's in that channel, right? I mean, you've done so much work there in outlining the useful things of Scrivener that authors can benefit from.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I've done a lot of Scrivener videos. So I've used the app for a long time, and I still think it's a great app. And I think for being able to write and outline and kind of plan your books, it's one of the best.
Yeah,
All right.
I'm just wondering what is your schedule? Do you like only need to sleep 2 hours a night? I mean, how in the world do you do all of this? I think I'm
Well,
productive. But no,
but Barb, I'm technically a cyborg. I didn't want to tell
you
anyone
did
it
that.
is, but you know,
That's
I
my
just
next
plug
question.
myself in every night and charge. No, I am not a cyborg, but I have been really focused on what is important for me. So writing and building a sustainable writing business is important to me, but also managing my family and managing those interests is also important. And so I wake up really early in the mornings, sometimes 6 o'clock. And that's when I am able to get a lot of my work done because everyone is asleep. And I can get a lot done in a 2 hour period between 6 and 8 o'clock in terms of writing, answering emails. I've also invested a lot in automation and just using tools and technology to minimize the amount of time I spend on non-writing tasks.
Yeah.
So that has been kind of a game changer for me. And just making sure that I'm really focused on doing the things that are only going to help me grow. And if
Yeah.
it doesn't help me
That's
grow, I don't do it, you know? And so it adds up over the years. I mean, I've been doing this for almost 11 years now, I think. And just those little actions every day add up in a big way. And, Jeremy and I have talked about writing on your phone. We talked about that, being able to dictate, being able to do more with the time that you have. So if all you've got to write is an hour, how do you make the most of that hour? And I think at the beginning of my career, I was fighting a lot with Microsoft Word. And so now
Yeah.
I don't do that at all. And so just the tools, technology, and just really good discipline and focus have been what have been the secrets to my success.
Well, and I like that filter of, is it going to help me grow? And if the answer is no, then just don't do it. Yeah.
Exactly.
What's next for you? What do we have to look forward to next?
Well, what's next? Okay, so I am doing a lot with AI right now. Um, I have developed an application that has basically allowed me to use the new GPT-3 model to
Okay.
proofread my work. So I can send a manuscript
Wow.
through, GPT-3, and it will come back with spelling and grammar errors that Grammarly and Pro Writing Aid could only dream of. And so it's helping me create cleaner manuscripts. So I've been invested a lot with AI. That's one of the big things that I'm doing right now.
Are you going to make that program available for purchase?
Yeah, we're thinking about it. Right now,
Yeah,
we're in the
let's do
final
that.
throes of the basic testing.
Yeah.
It's a little technical. It's a bit of an adventure to get it installed on your computer, but there's a rhyme and reason for that. But if we can make it easy and make it so that I can record a 5-minute YouTube video and help people install it and teach them how to use it, then yes, we are going to do it. So I'm opening it up for testing here soon, and my hope is that we'll be able to package it in a way that will help people.
Wow.
Yeah, I think that's awesome, because if you can have a one-time expense of a program, because I love Pro Writing Aid, but there is only so much it can do. And if you can have a one-time expense for a proofreading software versus needing to send it out to a proofreader every time you have a manuscript, that would be hugely beneficial to the author community. So yeah, I hope that works out that way.
Yeah, and it would be a one-time fee, but it's based on usage. So you would also have to pay OpenAI for how much you use, but it's unbelievably cheap. I mean, I can send a 50,000 word manuscript through the API, and I'll pay like $2.60.
Oh, wow.
Something like that. I
Oh
mean,
my word.
it's unbelievably cheap. So just
Yeah.
imagine being able to use that with, in tandem with a human editor, and
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
basically eliminate typos from your work altogether almost.
And how quick is the turnaround?
Oh, it's very quick. I mean, I can send. I mean, it's a couple minutes,
Yeah.
if that. I mean, if you just think, you do a writing session, like I went out and walked my dog and I dictated and I had it transcribed and I sent the text through to the API, took maybe 2 minutes. And that was like 2,000 words. So it doesn't take very long at all. It's really easy to use. And I've been like pleasantly surprised at how efficient it is. There are some downsides to it, as with all applications, but I'm excited about it. Like it has been a game changer for me personally. So I thought, well, why not help some other people do
Yeah.
that
I
too?
think that's great.
Yes, me too. Bravo.
All right. So before we go, I want to make sure we tell everybody where to find the Author Estate Handbook and the Author Heir. Wait, did I get that right?
Author Heir Handbook. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Where to find those and everything else that you want to tell people where to find you.
Yes. Well, if you're interested in taking those next steps for your estate planning, you can grab those books at all retailers in all formats. So they're available in ebook, paperback, large print, and audiobook. And you can find them at, just go to authorlevelup.com/estate handbook. And that will give you all the links. And if you're interested in some of the other things that I've got going on, you can find me at authorlevelup.com, and that will have a link to all of my books for writers, all of my YouTube efforts, and everything else that I got going on right now.
Well, thank you so much. This has been a really informative conversation. It's an important topic, and obviously you two have your affairs in order, and I need to go do that next.
Well, thank you both. It's been my pleasure.
Thanks, Michael.
So great.